Hi, I'm Lorie Coates, BCBA and coordinator of the BAIT team.
I'm Joceline Ruiz, BCBA, co-coordinator of the BAIT team.
And I'm Krystal Martin, BCBA and co-coordinator on the BAIT team.
And we're back with another episode of BAIT Debate, topics we're tackling. In BAIT Debate, we address simple research-based intervention strategies that will work with individual students or groups of students in school settings. The situations and questions that we talk about are adapted from what we are hearing and seeing in schools. These are common struggles with students of all abilities. And although they are simple strategies, they will be effective at decreasing challenging behavior and making your day just a little bit easier. We're excited to share these strategies to make them available to all staff working in schools. Don't forget to check us out on social media at behavior_in_progress on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and the BAIT Debate on YouTube. All right, Lorie and Krystal, last time we talked about communication compass and why communication is a crucial element to pay attention to when working with students. Can either of you tell us a situation that you had come up where this was an important topic?
I did just this past week. We had a student who had been very escalated and completely destroyed a classroom. And after he was regulated again, he was able to communicate. They had given him some communication strategies, and he was able to communicate using eye blinks. So he would do one blink for yes and two blinks for no. So they were allowing him a different communication strategy, even though this kid is very verbal and can tell you a lot of things when he's escalated. They were good to give him some strategies when he was more regulated, when he was trying to regulate. Yeah. How about you?
One that I can think of is we're working with a student who had a lot of externalizing behaviors, so like hitting, eloping, things like that. But behaviors improved, got better, but now the student's behaviors have changed to, instead of externalizing, they're internalizing behaviors. And the staff described it as being kind of more like depressed. I know we really can't say a student has depression, but just some of the symptoms like being more quiet, not really engaging with peers as much as that student did. And so it was just really awesome to hear how the staff had been paying attention to the students' change in behavior, because there were some other things that were going on in the home that the school was able to find out about why the student was engaging in different kinds of behaviors. So I just thought it was cool to think about communication in that way, that although the student may not be communicating with externalizing behaviors, we should still be paying attention to the changes in mood, or just anything that might be out of the ordinary for that student.
So it changes what students communicating to us and paying attention to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Mm-hmm.
So what is our topic for today?
Today we're talking about behavior traps. Krystal, can you tell us what is a behavior trap?
Yeah, a behavior trap is when you reinforce a challenging behavior to get it to stop quickly. This can lead to the behavior happening more often than because we have reinforced it. It's not meant to be intentional, but it's usually because we're trying to stop a behavior, a very challenging behavior, as soon as we can. One common example might be the grocery store candy at the checkout line. That candy is always at toddler level, and the young child may end up screaming and crying for the candy, and then the parents are going to give the candy to stop the child from screaming, and now they are in a behavior trap. Lorie, are behavior traps common in the school setting?
Oh, they're very common. We see them in all kinds of settings in the school, because we really want to stop that behavior before it gets more disruptive in the school setting, because again, that disruption is causing other issues with the student. They don't want to reinforce the student, but they end up doing it because they just need it to stop quickly. So it is super common. I don't know what my next question was. Okay, so Joceline, why do we want to avoid behavior traps?
When we're in a behavior trap, we're reinforcing the wrong behavior. So the result is a challenging behavior is happening more often and oftentimes more intensely. When we try to break that trap that we are in, more than likely we're in for a very challenging extinction burst. So if you all remember, an extinction burst is when the behavior gets worse before it gets better. That will likely happen when we are setting some different expectations for how the student is going to be reinforced. So if you are in a behavior trap and you're changing it, just be prepared that you might see an increase in behaviors. How do we avoid behavior traps?
Yeah, we need to pay attention to our own reinforcement patterns and the student's reinforcement. In the candy example, the parent is reinforced by the child quieting, and the parent is reinforced by the crying, and the parent reinforced the crying by giving the candy. Each party is then reinforced, and we need to watch for the times that we don't give into the challenging behavior and that we maintain our expectations. It may mean that the challenging behavior will persist for a bit, but it should decrease as we withhold the reinforcement. And we want to make sure that we continue to provide high reinforcement when the child is showing expected or desired behaviors. What do we do if we know we have stepped into a behavior trap, Lorie?
Well, we get ready. Once you realize you're in a behavior trap, you really need to get ready for how you're going to break that trap. As you mentioned earlier, because there could be an increase of that challenging behavior because the student is used to being reinforced for the challenging behavior, they are going to try harder. They're going to behave more intently. They're going to, in your example of the candy, they're going to cry harder and louder and maybe even make it a tantrum at that point because they don't like the reinforcement being withheld. And as you mentioned earlier, Joceline, this is when the behavior gets worse before it gets better, or in other words, an extinction burst. The other thing that you have to be prepared for is you in breaking that behavior trap, because you have also been reinforced by giving into that behavior. So how are you going to withhold reinforcement so that it's also changing your behavior pattern, which is really hard. So with that, give yourself grace because you're probably going to mess up. I think that's important. And maintain your expectations and keep withholding the reinforcement, as you mentioned earlier, because it will get better eventually. You can also do this carefully so you don't get yourself in too much of a power struggle. I think sometimes people worry about getting in a power struggle. But if you do this with some calmness, limiting your words, and reinforcing quickly when the expected behavior is exhibited, then you will get yourself out of that behavior trap eventually. It just will take a little bit of time. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Bait Debate. We are so excited to have the opportunity to share behavior strategies. Avoiding and working through behavior traps will give you and your classroom a lot more smooth interactions. We hope this information presented was meaningful to you all today. We also have a lot more exciting things for the future, so that'll help keep you and your educator friends reeled in. Be sure to like and share, and we'll catch you next time.